Good morning. This time we'll convene the Committee of Water Resources and Environment. Our hearing today is on the review of the fiscal year 2013 budget and priorities of the Environmental Protection Agency, and I'll start with my opening statement. And last year I've become alarmed at the overreach of the Environmental Protection Agency. The budget put forth from the administration for fiscal year 2013 does nothing to alleviate my concerns, starting with the proliferation of so-called guidance coming out of the EPA on an exponential increase in regulations being proposed and finalized by the agency. These are attempts to short-circuit the process for changing the law without following a proper, transparent rulemaking process or the consent of Congress. These actions being carried out by the EPA are often based on questionable science at best and stand to be substantially increase the regulatory burdens for states, local governments, and businesses, especially small businesses. At a minimum, since my arrival in Congress, the EPA has sought to arbitrarily expand the scope of jurisdiction of the Clean Water Act, halt the issuance of permits for legitimate economic development activities, illegally revoke already issued permits, expand regulation of stormwater, including post-construction site runoff, new development and redevelopment, and existing development through retrofitting, inflict one-size-fits-all numerical water quality standards on states and river basins, usurp state authority by taking over watershed implementation plans for the Chesapeake Bay and other watersheds, subject Appalachia to unequal treatment under the law by enforcing illegal so-called enhancement coordination activities related to coal mining, place states in the unenviable position of having to break federal law or break state law when EPA issues guidance or draft guidance in the field. These actions, among many others, mean more unfunded mandates to burden our cities and towns at a time when they need relief from these types of injustices. EPA is taking these actions with little regard to economic consequences, with little regard to national security, and most importantly, with little regard to the law. This is a government that believes there is no limit to its power. I am pleased to see that the federal courts, including the Supreme Court in the Sackett case and the U.S. District Court from the District of Columbia in the Mingo-Logan case, are recognizing EPA's power grab and are starting to push back against the EPA. Last week, the Supreme Court reined in an EPA on the agency's aggressive use of enforcement orders to strong-arm property owners, and the U.S. District Court in D.C. reeled in EPA's overreach with the agency's after-the-fact revocation of a 404 permit that had been issued to a West Virginia coal company. I am concerned that while the President is imposing more regulatory burdens on communities, businesses, and citizens, he is at the same time calling for eliminating compliance assistance to those same communities, businesses, and citizens. The President's budget also calls for the reinstatement of old and arbitrary Superfund tax on chemical companies, financial institutions, and other business sectors that may have nothing to do with creating the environmental problems associated with the Superfund site. So what we have here is a federal agency that will add to the burden of rules and regulations and eliminate programs to help communities come into compliance, but will also put more boots on the ground to track down those who cannot come into compliance with little or no benefit to the environment. This is a government at its worst, an agency cutting facilitators but increasing regulators. I want clean water as much as everyone, but I recognize that we have to have a strong economy so we can be able to afford to invest in new programs that new regulations require. Today is not the day to put more burdens on the American people. We need to make significant progress in creating long-term jobs and a stronger economy before we can tolerate more expansive regulations. I now recognize Ranking Member Mr. Bishop for any comments you may have.